There are certain automobiles that seem destined to divide opinion from the very moment they appear. Some become instant classics, while others spend years waiting for the world to catch up with their vision. The 1972 Buick Riviera belonged firmly to the second category. Long before collectors began paying premium prices for pristine examples, before auction houses celebrated its dramatic silhouette, and before enthusiasts proudly called it one of the boldest American designs ever produced, the Riviera stood as a daring gamble during one of the most turbulent periods in automotive history. The story of the 1972 Buick Riviera begins decades earlier. In the years following World War II, the American automobile industry entered an era of unprecedented growth. Families moved into suburbs, highways stretched across the nation, and car ownership became a symbol of success. Within the vast hierarchy of General Motors, Buick occupied a unique position. It sat above Chevrolet and Pontiac in prestige, but remained more attainable than Cadillac. Buick buyers sought comfort, style, and refinement without stepping into the highest luxury bracket. By the early 1960s, a new market segment was emerging. Americans wanted personal luxury cars, vehicles that combined the elegance of a luxury automobile with the sporty image of a performance machine. Buick answered in 1963 with the introduction of the Riviera. The original Riviera immediately gained admiration for its clean lines and sophisticated appearance. Over the following years, it established itself as one of Detroit's most respected personal luxury cars. As the 1960s drew to a close, however, automotive styling became increasingly dramatic. Designers searched for ways to make their vehicles stand out in crowded showrooms. One designer in particular, Jerry Hirschberg, helped shape a concept that would eventually become one of the most recognizable Buicks ever built. The third-generation Riviera debuted for the 1971 model year, and it stunned the automotive world. Its most striking feature was the sharply tapered rear section that quickly earned the nickname Boattail. Inspired partly by classic speedboats and luxury yachts, the rear deck narrowed dramatically toward the back of the car. Nothing else on American roads looked quite like it. When the 1972 Buick Riviera arrived, it represented the second year of this radical design philosophy. Although visually similar to the 1971 model, Buick engineers and executives continued refining the car while attempting to balance style, luxury, and performance during a rapidly changing era. The early 1970s were not easy years for American automakers. New federal emissions regulations were beginning to affect engine performance. Insurance premiums for powerful vehicles were rising. Public attitudes toward fuel consumption were slowly changing. Yet Buick remained committed to offering a grand touring automobile capable of crossing entire states in effortless comfort. Under the long hood of the 1972 Riviera sat Buick's massive 455 cubic inch V8 engine. This engine had become one of the division's most respected power plants. Thanks to changes in industry-wide horsepower measurement standards, Buick advertised the engine at 250 net horsepower and a remarkable 370 pound-feet of torque. While those figures appeared lower than earlier gross horsepower ratings, the Riviera remained a genuinely powerful automobile capable of smooth acceleration and confident highway cruising. The Riviera rode on General Motors' E-body platform and stretched more than 217 inches in length. Its substantial dimensions reflected American tastes of the era. Drivers expected a luxury car to provide a commanding presence, and the Riviera certainly delivered. The long hood, hidden headlights, sculpted body sides, and dramatic rear profile gave the car an unmistakable identity. Inside, buyers found an environment designed to compete with far more expensive luxury automobiles. Plush seating, simulated wood trim, thick carpeting, and an extensive list of optional equipment reinforced Buick's reputation for comfort. Air conditioning, power windows, power seats, cruise control, and premium audio systems were increasingly common selections among Riviera customers. The base price of a 1972 Riviera approached $5,300, a substantial sum at the time. Adjusted for inflation, that figure represented a significant investment. Buyers expected quality, prestige, and exclusivity, and Buick positioned the Riviera accordingly. Public reaction remained mixed but intensely passionate. Many observers admired the Riviera's bold styling and praised Buick for taking risks in an industry increasingly dominated by conservative designs. Others found the Boattail rear controversial and unconventional. Yet even critics often admitted that the Riviera possessed a presence impossible to ignore. Automotive journalists frequently praised the car's smooth ride, powerful engine, and luxurious accommodations. Driving a Riviera was less about aggressive cornering and more about effortless grand touring. It was a car designed for wide American highways, where its torque-rich V8 and comfortable suspension could shine. As 1972 progressed, the Riviera continued attracting buyers who wanted something distinctive. In a marketplace filled with increasingly similar personal luxury cars, Buick offered an automobile that stood apart from everything else on the road. That uniqueness would ultimately become both its greatest strength and its greatest challenge, as changing economic realities and shifting consumer preferences began to cast long shadows over Detroit's golden age of personal luxury. For those who purchased a 1972 Buick Riviera new, ownership was about far more than transportation. The moment a driver settled behind the wheel, turned the ignition key, and felt the massive 455 cubic inch V8 come to life, the Riviera announced itself with a quiet confidence that few automobiles could match. This was not a muscle car demanding attention through tire smoke and aggressive exhaust notes. Instead, it was a grand touring machine, designed to make every journey feel important. The driving experience reflected Buick's philosophy perfectly. The Riviera's abundant torque arrived effortlessly, allowing the car to surge forward with remarkable smoothness despite weighing well over 2 tons. Whether pulling away from a traffic light or merging onto an interstate highway, the Riviera rarely felt strained. Drivers often described the sensation as being pushed forward by an invisible hand rather than propelled by mechanical force. On long highway trips, the Riviera truly revealed its character. America's expanding interstate system offered endless miles of open pavement, and the Buick seemed purpose-built for such roads. The suspension absorbed imperfections with ease, while the long wheelbase contributed to exceptional stability at cruising speeds. Passengers could converse comfortably without raising their voices, a quality highly valued by luxury buyers during the era. Inside the cabin, Buick engineers focused on comfort and refinement. Thickly padded seats provided support during extended drives, and the dashboard featured an elegant arrangement of instruments and controls. Optional equipment allowed buyers to tailor their Riviera to personal tastes. Power accessories, automatic climate control, tilt steering wheels, and premium upholstery transformed the car into a rolling luxury suite. For many owners, the Riviera represented the culmination of years of professional success and personal ambition. Walking into a Buick dealership in 1972 was an experience in itself. Sales personnel often presented the Riviera as something special within the Buick lineup. Prospective customers were encouraged to admire the dramatic Boattail styling from every angle before taking a test drive. The unusual rear design generated conversations wherever the car appeared. Some customers fell in love immediately, while others required time to appreciate its unconventional shape. Despite its many strengths, the Riviera faced increasingly difficult market conditions. The personal luxury segment had become highly competitive. Rivals such as the Ford Thunderbird and the Cadillac Eldorado competed aggressively for affluent buyers. Each offered distinctive styling, luxury appointments, and strong brand recognition. Meanwhile, broader changes were reshaping the automotive landscape. Federal emissions regulations became more restrictive each year, Manufacturers reduced compression ratios to accommodate lower-octane fuels and meet environmental requirements. As a result, horsepower figures across the industry declined noticeably compared with the high-performance peak of the late 1960s. Insurance companies also began charging significantly higher premiums for powerful automobiles. Younger buyers who might once have considered large displacement luxury performance cars increasingly found ownership costs difficult to justify. Concerns about fuel consumption, although not yet dominant, were beginning to enter public discussion as energy markets showed signs of instability. Sales reflected these challenges. While the Riviera retained a loyal customer base, its dramatic styling limited its appeal to mainstream buyers. The very feature that made the car memorable, the sweeping Boattail rear section, also discouraged some potential customers who preferred more traditional designs. Yet among enthusiasts, admiration continued to grow. Many viewed the Riviera as evidence that Detroit still possessed the courage to experiment. In an industry becoming increasingly constrained by regulations, economics, and changing consumer expectations, the 1972 Riviera stood as a bold statement of creativity and confidence. As the year progressed, however, the forces transforming the American automobile industry grew stronger. The era that had created giant luxury performance coupes was approaching a turning point, and the Riviera would soon find itself navigating a future very different from the one envisioned when its dramatic Boattail shape first emerged from the designer's studios. As the 1970s moved forward, the world that had given birth to the Buick Riviera began to change rapidly. What had once seemed like a limitless age of big engines, abundant fuel, and extravagant automotive styling was entering a period of uncertainty. For the Riviera, the transformation would be both challenging and defining. The first signs appeared almost immediately after the 1972 model year. Rising fuel prices, tightening emissions regulations, and changing consumer priorities forced American manufacturers to rethink their approach to vehicle design. Then came the energy crisis of 1973, an event that sent shockwaves through the automotive industry. Long lines at gas stations and growing concerns about fuel economy suddenly made large displacement luxury cars appear less practical than they had only a few years earlier. Buick responded as best it could, but the market was changing faster than anyone had anticipated. The dramatic Boattail styling that had generated headlines and showroom traffic gradually gave way to more conservative designs. For the 1974 model year, the Riviera's famous tapered rear end was significantly toned down. The bold experiment that had defined the third-generation Riviera was effectively coming to an end. At the time, many observers viewed the Boattail Riviera as an interesting but flawed chapter in Buick history. Yet history often has a way of rewarding originality. As decades passed, collectors began looking back at the early 1970s with fresh eyes. Cars that had once been criticized for their unconventional styling suddenly appeared courageous and distinctive. The 1972 Riviera benefited enormously from this shift in perception. Enthusiasts realized that few American automobiles captured the spirit of their era so completely. The car represented the final years before fuel shortages, downsizing, and regulatory pressures permanently altered Detroit's approach to luxury and performance. Preserving a 1972 Riviera, however, is not always simple. Restoration projects can be demanding due to the vehicle's unique body panels and specialized trim pieces. Mechanical components are generally easier to source because the 455 V8 shared many parts with other Buick products of the period. Cosmetic items, particularly those associated with the Boattail design, can be far more difficult to locate in excellent condition. Owners who undertake full restorations often discover that attention to detail makes a significant difference. Original upholstery patterns, factory color combinations, trim components, and documentation can greatly influence collector value. A properly restored Riviera becomes more than a vintage automobile. It becomes a rolling piece of American industrial art. Auction results over the past 2 decades have demonstrated growing appreciation for well-preserved examples. While the Riviera has not always commanded the prices associated with certain muscle cars or exotic European classics, exceptional Boattail models have steadily gained respect among collectors. Their rarity, distinctive appearance, and historical significance continue to attract enthusiasts seeking something different from the usual collector car offerings. Today, the 1972 Buick Riviera occupies a unique place in automotive history. It stands as a reminder of a period when designers were encouraged to take risks, and when luxury automobiles could be both elegant and unapologetically dramatic. The sweeping rear deck, hidden headlights, and massive V8 engine tell the story of an America that believed bigger could be better, and that style could be as important as practicality. More than 50 years after it first appeared in Buick showrooms, the 1972 Riviera remains
1972, you're
impossible
looking
to
for a
mistake
new
for
ride,
anything else.
you want
Once
something that stands
controversial,
out,
then
this is
overlooked
it.
and finally
Buick
celebrated, it
Riviera,
has completed
and
a
it's got,
remarkable journey from showroom
it just stands out.
curiosity to
Everybody at the
collector
time,
icon.
everybody now
Its
should know
legacy endures
that
not
this is a
because it
Riviera.
followed
You can see
automotive
the
trends,
rear
but
end.
because it
It
dared to
goes back
create its
to, a lot of
own.
people would say, the
That willingness to
63
be different is
Corvette.
precisely why the
But this,
1972
and it
Buick
does have the
Riviera
line going
remains
on the
one of the
roof
most
like the 63
recognizable,
did, but it's
admired,
got the
and
one-piece
unforgettable
glass,
luxury
and
cars
it works its
ever
way
built in
down into the
America.
trunk.